Great, thanks. Janice, are we good?
We're good.
Okay.
Excellent. Good evening and welcome to the October 7th, 2024 regular meeting of the Township of Montclair Planning Board. In accordance with the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting a copy of the notice on the first floor of the municipal building and by sending a copy to the newspaper designated by the township for notices. This meeting is being broadcast live on Channel 34 and is streaming live and will be available on demand on YouTube. This meeting is a quasi-judicial proceeding, meaning the board has powers and procedures resembling a court of law, and we're obligated to objectively determine facts and draw conclusions from them in order to provide the basis of an official action. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues of what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and the decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. Fire exits are on my right, which is your left, and at the back of the room where you entered. And first up is roll call.
Mayor Baskerville.
Present.
Mr. Borshoff.
Here.
Mr. Campbell.
Happy to be back.
Mr. Graham.
Here.
Mr. Inwali.
Here.
Counselor Lockman.
Here.
Mr. Felice is not here. Miss Willis is excused. Mr. Jacobson just ran out. Mr. Neiman.
Here.
And Chair Brodock.
I'm here.
Okay.
Welcome back, everyone, after 6 weeks away.
I know, right?
Next up, we have approval of the minutes from August 19th.
I received changes from Chair Brodock. Are there any additional changes?
I'm sorry, but do you mind just going over your changes, Keith?
Sure.
Yeah. Just want to see if they match mine, and I didn't get a chance to look at yours.
Yes, no problem. So, first it was Norberto there that night?
He was not.
He was not, so Norberto would be marked as absent
Right.
instead of present.
My apologies, daughter calls from college and pick up. You only get one of those every 2 weeks or so, you know.
Okay.
Understandable. Also, Mr. Ian Wally abstained on the vote, so it's on the second page.
Right.
And then also on the second page, under the resolution for application 2893, where at the last sentence where it reads Councilor Lockman struck and,
Oh.
added a comment, Mr. Ian Wally, or sorry, added a comma, then Mr. Ian Wally added another comma before the and. And then on page, looks like this is page 3, I changed where fourth round obligation was capitalized, I changed it to be lowercase just for consistency, but whether it's
Where are you?
uppercase, I am
Third page.
just above the bullets, where it says the time frame for
Oh, fourth
addressing
round.
fourth
Gotcha.
round obligation, and that's consistent throughout.
Okay.
And then the first bullet I revised, it says October 20th, 2024, DCA must produce report on, and I changed it to say regional needs and municipal obligations.
Yeah, I had something like that, too. Yeah.
And second bullet, municipalities must adopt a binding resolution accepting the DCA municipal obligation.
Yeah.
And similarly, the third bullet, deadline to challenge municipal obligation. The following paragraph, there's an extraneous number 2.
Yeah.
Remove that. And then on the fourth page, the second bullet, just some wordsmithing. Revising affordable housing regulations to require a further set aside for supportive housing that provides safe, permanent, and affordable homes.
I had one more thing.
Sure.
On the third page, excuse me, it's the 1, 2, 3, the fifth line down. It should be amended spending plan that expanded the township's affordable housing programs. Is that correct?
Approved in a-
In the first paragraph?
Yeah. The court approved.
What was that
Yeah,
again?
it says plan.
In 2018,
Expanded to the.
is that, the 2 shouldn't be in there.
Crossed out the 2 right
Ah.
there and has the.
Amended.
Okay, yes.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other changes? there a motion to approve as amended?
Motion to approve as amended.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Okay, we have no resolutions, no old business, so we're at new business, application.
Not quite. Are you going to go through planning board committees 2024? You had submitted that part of the package, and I just wanted to note Kevin Ortiz is no longer here, yet he's on the,
Oh, that would be Pierre.
so
the
is that
class-
substituting Pierre?
Yeah.
Okay.
So application 2805, 82 Pine Street, request for extension. I assume Mr. Tremblay's not appearing before us tonight?
I gather not.
I have spoken with him,
Okay.
and he and I...
Is your microphone on?
He and I discussed how the board, what the mechanism for this extension would be if the board was willing to grant it. And he and I both realized that there is a provision in the MLUL that provides for this board to exercise a discretionary extension. In other cases, we've required the proponent of an extension to come before the board and say they were prevented from moving forward because they had issues with a governing agency or some such thing like that. But in this particular case, under 52 of the MLUL, the board has the discretion to grant an extension of 1 to 3 years, in fact. So I just put that out there in the event that the board wants to act favorably on the application.
Thank you. I mean, I personally don't have an issue with a one-year extension. I think that's what
Was requested.
Mr. Tremblay's was requesting.
Is there any limit to the number of extensions that can be given?
3 years.
Oh, but can you do three
One, one, one.
one-year extensions, 1 3-year extension, 2 2-year extensions, like the
You had to
maximum?
ask that question, didn't you?
I did,
Jay?
yeah.
Mr. Tremblay's letter states that you can grant up to 3 one-year extensions of the statutory protective period. So I'm assuming we'd be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can I make a motion to extend the requirement for application 2805, 82 Pine Street for an additional year?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
There you go.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Okay, that brings us to the ordinance to regulate small cell wireless facilities within the Township Rights-of-Way.
You've seen this ordinance before.
I'm out of this one, so I'll step into the audience for this
Okay.
discussion,
Okay.
and then I'll come back for the next one.
The ordinance has been revised to add the requirements that were recommended by the planning board back in May. This was never moved on by the previous council, and the current council wants to take action and get this ordinance in place. So, again, we changed the regulations to address all of your concerns. However, today I received some additional comments from Ms. Lockman, reflecting recommendations made from Bill Harrison of the Board of Adjustment, which really changes the public notice requirements. As you recall, the planning board asked that all of the neighbors within the blocks on both sides of the street where a facility is located be included in the public notice. Mr. Harrison saw the draft ordinance and recommended that it not be so broad because the municipal land use law very narrowly defines the notice requirements, and he felt that the township could not really go beyond that. so he moved it to 200 feet around the location of the facilities themselves. So that's the only change that was not incorporated into this version of the ordinance.
It was included, that change was included in what was handed out, right, in the packets?
Yes, you
I
didn't
see, okay.
I got the information
Understood.
today.
Okay, are we okay to, are we voting on this at all, or is there?
You have to, essentially, it has not been reintroduced by the council. I know that Ms. Lockman will, or Councilor Lockman will let you know. I think she wants to get it introduced.
Yeah, I'd like to get this introduced at the next meeting, which is October 29th, because there's, as you remember from the discussion, there's the possibility that a telecommunications company could come in, and without this ordinance, they can kind of willy-nilly put their stuff all over the place, their antennas, their small cell boxes and all that. So this provides guidance as to where they can put it and a whole lot of rules around it. So it's really helpful to the residents.
No, I agree,
Yeah.
Counselor, and
Yeah.
I, remember, read it the first time
Yes,
around and this
yeah,
time around,
yeah.
and we made some recommendations
Yes.
as well. My only question is if, given this change at the last minute, if there's any notice provisions being violated, any sunshine laws, if you will.
For the board?
Yeah,
No.
No.
Okay, that's all I'm
This
asking.
hasn't been referred.
that's all I'm asking, okay.
Yeah.
I did have one question about, so one of the edits said small cell wireless, and this is right under the definition section, where in the C1, C2, C3, NC, OR3, and OR4 zones,
Yeah.
there was an addition saying small cell wireless facilities may be located on private property only when the use is non-residential. And I was wondering about multifamily in that case.
I don't think that's what they mean. I think they,
Well, it's also really hard to define not residential. We have residences all over the place.
Right.
Yeah.
There's mixed use, so,
Right.
I mean, is it a shopping center or?
But it's in those, it's in residential zones. This is, so right now, it's just for non-residential uses, which includes parks, or township facilities, or we do have some non-residential, we might have a nonprofit type use, which is in a residential zone district.
But why couldn't we have small cell wireless facilities on residential uses in those areas?
You mean multifamily residential?
Correct.
Right, if you want to add that, we can add that language to the recommendation you're making to the council.
I mean, I think the brief of this group is to see if this ordinance is consistent with the master plan. Isn't that correct?
Well, that's part of it, and they also have the ability to make recommendations.
Yeah.
I would be uncomfortable recommending adding residential uses without proper notice to the public to come in and express their opinions on that change.
But it would, it would.
No.
We wouldn't have a
every-
hearing on this.
You have to have a hearing for
Yeah.
this, and it goes as, there's a minor site plan approval, so likely it goes before the zoning board.
This is just the planning board's recommendation prior to the council's reintroduction. There's no.
I would be comfortable recommending
No,
it
no, it was the other
as is
ones.
with that one change. I would not be comfortable making the change for residential use. That's my personal opinion.
Janice, when regular wireless, someone wants to put a tower on a building, how does that happen? Let's
They-
leave this out for a second.
Well-
So, in the old, I still call it the Olympic building, but,
Yeah, yeah.
The which
is that a use that's permitted in that zone? Or is it a variance that's needed to put that tower on?
Which one are you talking about?
The old, the traditional cell phone towers that are high in the air on top of
Well,
buildings.
it
and so forth.
depends on, it's permitted in some zone districts.
Okay, so
it's
then would
permitted
you
in our
not make it a
commercial zone
permitted
district.
use in a zone?
Excuse me?
Instead of burying it in this, wouldn't you make it make it an allowed use in a zone instead of sticking it here where it's hard to find? So if you want to define a small wireless facility as an allowed use, you would add it to the list of allowed uses within a zone.
No, I believe this is a conditional use.
Or make it a
Much like
conditional
wireless
use
it's in the section of our ordinance, right, following the wireless telecommunications facilities. Our ordinance is not well set up. So
Well, this
if you-
makes it worse, though, because you're putting something in where, let's say you go to all these non-residential uses, and you don't see, and we're saying here that a small cell wireless facility is permitted. So then it's not listed where you're looking in terms of where permitted uses are, and you're missing something.
That is, you're correct, absolutely, Tony. And you remember in 2018, we recommended restructuring our ordinance so that it was clear, and we
Oh, I
had
understand that,
tables.
but that's
It's
not
not-
necessarily an argument to make it even worse than it is.
So what you're suggesting is this ordinance should be amended to include changes to every zone district where this is permitted, so it's added.
Well, if we're speaking about making it a permitted use, put it where all the other permitted uses are for that
Which is in
zone.
each individual zone district. That's what you're recommending.
I'm not sure if I want to do it.
Unfortunately, that's the way our ordinance is structured. We don't have a table in one location where you can find and figure out what the permitted uses
Yeah.
are. You
Well,
have to
here's
go
a
into each
recommendation.
zone
Maybe that's a
district.
suggestion.
The
Yeah.
language that this is based on is about putting small cell wireless towers in rights-of-way.
Right.
It's not about putting it on private property, so why don't you just make that a separate what if, but limit this to areas where there's a right-of-way? Because that's what the fundamental that US Law 47 applies to, so make this only apply to rights-of-way. And I think you have to define the rights-of-way better, because it could be Hinks Alley, that's a little small to put a tower on. I think you also have to figure out, like, what's the difference between a county
I
right-of-way?
don't think Hinks Alley's, I think with right-of-way, we defined it.
Well, I'm just exaggerating. I mean,
Yeah, I was gonna say, we define it for a vehicle.
Oh,
Hinks
okay.
Alley is just a walkway.
Well, is it defined that way? Well, I guess, then what's the difference between a county right-of-way and a municipal right-of-way? Does the county trump what we want to do in our town?
We don't dictate the county right-of-way. We only dictate the municipal right-of-way.
I think that there may be, because I was reading Milburn's and Summit's, and they define it that, in their ordinance, they say that there's a law, it's a state law, I don't remember what it was, but they say that the town can administer and regulate what's in the counties right away. So I think we should include that here.
I think we
Otherwise,
would have to get Essex County's approval.
I don't think so. I think that, look it up. I wish I found it. There's a state law which says that even though it's a county right-of-way, each municipality has the ability to regulate what's in a county right-of-way that passes through their town.
Tony,
It's
that's
in-
in one of the ordinances that you read?
Yeah,
or-
Milburn or Summit, and it cites a specific state law which gives municipalities a right, and it distinguishes, you have to be, because right here, we just say they're rights of way without really distinguishing whether it's, land that's owned by Montclair, or whether there's an easement in favor of the
Well, I'm
town. So I
pretty
think we should
sure, I don't have the
distinguish.
code in front of me, but I'm pretty sure there's a definition in the code for right-of-way. So the zoning code. So let me see what definition we're working with.
I mean, there's a definition in this section for public right-of-way.
Yeah, but it doesn't distinguish what.
Right,
what
it doesn't
that is.
distinguish
Right.
between the two.
If I can, I see if I can find,
All right.
Just, Mr. Graham, the one reason I bring up multifamily is there may be a need to actually have these in multifamily dwellings or near multifamily dwellings in order for the 5G signal to get into the buildings.
Oh.
It was a big concern of the real estate industry.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago when this is coming out, I haven't quite followed it so closely, but there was concern that those signals are of such a nature that they won't penetrate as far into a multifamily building as the current system does.
I was not aware of that.
So that's why I raised that, and it's not something we necessarily have to decide tonight, but it's something that, as this comes back to us in a referral, we could talk a bit more about.
I would be concerned because the multifamily residents likely have less control of a tower going in if they don't want it. So that would be my primary concern, but I do think that's a legitimate topic to discuss.
I found Milburn's. So it defines the right-of-ways. First, it defines it as a municipal right-of-way, which means a surface of, space above, below, any public street, road, lane, path, public way, place, sidewalk, so on and so forth. This term also includes any other area that is determined by the township to be a right-of-way in which the township may allow installation of poles, cabinets, antennas, as well as rights-of-way held by the County of Essex, where the township's approval is required for the use of same pursuant to NJSA 27:16-6. So that state law, I think, we should look at to see if it would apply. That gives the town approval before the county can come in and do a deal with, Verizon or something.
Okay.
But
Dennis, please, point of clarification, where it says the newly elected council has revised the ordinance. I'm not familiar with the newly elected council doing all these things that are here and reviewing this and revising it. So can you help me understand what's meant by that?
I received the revised ordinance from Counselor Lockman.
Okay, so the council, just so you'll know, didn't do that. The council
don't-
didn't have a discussion on any of this altogether, so that's not really representing facts.
Oh,
And
I
I'd like it to be
apologize.
stricken to read exactly whatever it is.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a couple of just like nits and gnats in the fourth whereas. It talks about the U.S. Act, then it goes right into section 347-17. In ordinance, it's 17.1.
What page are you on, Tony?
The fourth whereas on page 1, it morphs from 47 U.S.C., and the period is the end of the sentence, and it says section 347-17. In ordinance, it's 17.1.
17.1.
17 is heliports, just in case you want to. And then, a little nit, in 202, the administrative requirements, there's already an F. I think the next available one is an I. So for 202, 29.1, F, I think the next letter that's available, at least on the online one, is I.
Okay.
Where are you looking? I'm sorry.
Page 3,
Yeah, but-
just that
oh,
F, I'm just saying it should be F, but it's, and then 50 feet is really high. And the two other codes I looked at, because your average telephone pole is like 30 feet, it's not that big. So 50 feet is really, really high, and I'm not sure where the 50 feet came from. And I know that it does say unless the others in the neighborhood are lower, but I think we should start at 35 feet.
Is the
because-
50 feet in the commercial districts and
Yeah,
30
but who
and
cares?
35 feet in the residential, I think
Oh, it says
is.
35 in the residence?
Yeah.
But why should
If
we,
I-
I mean, okay, so then a commercial building could be lower than a house. So the 50 feet would look even higher. Because if you go to a supermarket, they're one story. So 50 feet is going to look really big. So, and I think that, I don't think, I've seen so many of these, these, what do you call them? What's the new thing? Something 5? Was it G?
G5G, yeah, that's what
5G.
this is, yeah.
They're short, they're not that tall. I don't think you need 50 feet. So Milburn's got 35, and Summit has 35. They just use that. And that's probably. For commercial too. I think it's it's everything. I don't know why it would need to be taller in commercial.
Okay.
I just think that would make it a lot more palatable. That's all I got.
Yes, please. I'd like to ask that, since obviously it would be a wonderful thing if the newly elected council could have an opportunity to review this, that the newly elected council be given an opportunity to review this and make suggestions and anything else that they would like to add
They will be.
to this.
After the planning board gives its report, it goes to the newly elected council in full, and the council reviews it.
Yeah, now, I just want to make sure that it is. It's just so unusual that we would have in writing that the council did something that we didn't, and I'm a little concerned about that. So I want to make sure,
I know.
for the record, that it's on there that we will be given an opportunity.
It is defined. Okay, yeah, that was not my intent. I didn't know who the ordinance had been circulated with. And it's, of course, the council will have the ability to review and discuss it.
Okay, so then we need to correct everything that's in here, right? And then bring it back. I don't think we should vote on something that has information that's just not correct.
What's not correct is the accompanying memo, where this, it said the council, the newly elected council.
And all of the
has-
stuff that's in red, right? Said it said that the council did this, and the council didn't do this.
I'll let Counselor Lockman respond to your.
Okay,
I may not even need a response, I'm just, it's just
I really
so
don't know.
unusual. Have you had this happen before?
I'll tell you why it happened. Okay, so there's a certain push to get this ordinance in place so that it can protect our residents. And it came to the prior council, I guess, I don't know exactly what date, but early in the year. They didn't get a chance to finalize it in the second reading. It had a first reading, and they didn't get a chance from the time point of view to do a second reading. So because it was an open item, I personally picked it up and said, oh, let me get going on this, because otherwise a telecommunications company could come in and willy-nilly start putting poles all over the place without any guidance. And so this allows us to give them guidance about the site and the look and the everything about it. So it was a plus here. So it will, the practice is the planning board will come up and give the council a report. Then we'll look at this and we can make whatever changes we want. It's not like this is not going to be looked at by the full council.
No, and I respect that, but the thing that I really don't respect is that you are meticulous about going through every comma, everything, and all the notes and changing them, and where it says the newly elected council, you didn't jump on it and say, hey, no, it wasn't the newly elected council. This was Carmel Lockman's personal red write-up, and correct it. So therefore, it's just giving, it's a little odious in terms of the intention here, and it's not a good feeling, and it's not a plus whenever we are doing things that are not correct or not accurate. So, I understand the need for it to go on. That's not the matter. It's just to what extent are we willing to go to get what we want. And I think that that's a huge concern nationally, and it's disturbing that it's happening right here.
Well, I guess I'll take exception to that, Mayor, because myself, Mr. Harrison, Susan Appman from the Environmental Commission, and Mr. Burr, Janice, we all spent hours going over this. And there's one word that's mistaken. Yes, the newly elected council didn't look at this yet, but it will go to newly elected council. They will look at it. It'll have a first reading, hopefully, in October 29th, when everybody on the council will look at it and make comments. And then if it passes the first reading, it gets voted on, comments included or whatever, at the second reading, which hopefully will be sometime in mid-November. In the meantime, let's hope that a telecommunication company doesn't get wind of what we're doing here, trying to pass this ordinance, and come in and, as I said, put cell towers and boxes the size of refrigerators all over the place.
And Counselor, just for clarity, it was looked at by a group, correct?
Yes, Mr. Harrison,
And-
who is here if you have any questions of him, he's an expert in this field. He handles litigation with telecommunications companies. He looks at ordinances with other towns. He's an expert in this. And it was looked at by the prior council, hired and paid another law firm who is an expert in this also to help us craft this. And then there were people that are specialists in this as well, who are not legal people, who the Environmental Commission people understand would be helpful in crafting this ordinance. So this has gone through every expert under the sun to get to this place.
And that was not my concern at all, and I noted your objection, and I just want to have it noted that I think that this is not a good thing when we have, the person here that goes through every single thing and finds whatever's wrong down to the last comma and has this here. So if we would have listed all the people who, I value and respect, and I'm sure it was gone through in a wonderful way, then it would have been fine. But the fact that it says that the newly elected, and then it says that we wrote these things in red, which can't possibly be the case, is what I'm taking objection to, and that's it. I know the process, I know the procedure, just like you've been here before, I've been here before, but I also know the difference in truth and not truth.
So speaking of process, so is the process that the council likely will pick this up, review it, make its recommendations, go through the first reading, and then at that point officially refer it to the planning board. Is that
At the next meeting, at the
Is that
last meeting. in
generally how this
October.
goes?
If it comes from the planning board, it doesn't have to come back if there's no substantive changes. But if the council recommends some substantive changes, and that's a term of art, then it does have to come back to the planning board again, so.
Well, it sounds like we have some disagreements, or at least things that we need to talk about further as a board. So I don't think we're quite at the point of, at least as far as I can see, recommending this to the council at this point. So I think I'd rather,
You want to wait for it to come back.
I think so.
That's an option,
Yeah.
you know. we'll
I
have-
like
it
that.
can be
I mean,
interesting.
I'm really, we're just trying to protect the town here.
I
When we
understand.
were
Sure.
doing this, we were not trying to violate any process here or overlook people's opinions, but just in the interest, and Janice, you know this, because this was emphasized, that we want to get this in place as soon as possible, and the initial ordinance that was looked at, there was some encouragement to, to pass it at a second reading with the prior council, just in terms of expediency. But that was said, well, and then we could change it later. That, we said, no, we're not, no one is knocking at our door yet, so let's get this ordinance right the first time. And that's what we tried to do here.
But in practical terms, now that it's here, we have it, right, we looked at it. Why let it go back to the council, and then they'll miss what we have to say? Suppose they never hear that we have some suggestions, and it goes back to the council and they never refer it back. So to the extent that we're making some comments now, they could be lost.
I think you have, honestly, these changes were developed from Counselor Lockman, working with Bill Harrison with answering some questions. I had a role in this very late in the game on these last changes. So I think you don't have to take official action. I think we've heard your comments.
Honestly,
And-
I thought the council, because I thought the council sent it back to us, because I just read it. It said the council looked, and my takeaway was that, the council looked at it, and
But
it came back to us
but
for
we've
review.
clarified that now.
Yeah,
That's
so-
not, I agree. I felt the same way walking in tonight, but we've clarified
Yeah,
that's not the case. So I think,
But now that we have,
yep.
it's almost like, well,
Well, we have, I think there's some issues, or at least
Yeah.
topics that we need to discuss as a board, and I don't think we have the means to do that right now. I don't think we're prepared to do
yeah,
that.
because we already sent it back, right? Well, I wasn't here, but you guys sent it back, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
Yeah, a
months
long
ago.
time- Long time ago.
Months,
yeah.
but
in May.
yes.
It was May.
So what I'm suggesting is that have the council look at this, maybe make changes. They've heard, hopefully, the things we've said. If it makes folks feel better, I'd be fine if Ms. Talley typed up a few bullets of here's generally what the board discussed.
I could put it in the minutes. I think the best thing is, Carmel, if you and I could meet.
Yeah, or just make the changes that Tony suggested in the
Exactly.
document, and then
Well-
move on. I mean, it sounds like everything that you're saying is
Well,
valid, is
the
very
other issue is
valid.
also the residential portion of it.
Yeah.
We'd want to discuss that further. But just to clarify procedurally, if we proceed this way, will we have another opportunity to review, or is it at the discretion of the council?
I think if you're not going to give comment tonight formally, then you'd have to come back once it's introduced, and then you'll have the opportunity.
And then we'll have an opportunity. I
Yeah.
think that's probably the best. I respect, Counselor, the urgency, but I think that's probably the wiser course is to get some more information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great.
Everyone, head nods, okay. Okay. That's what we'll do.
Unbelievable.
Okay, next we have an affordable housing update. Mr. Jacobson is returning to the dais.
Janice, you'll put in the minutes why I was recused from that last one.
I'm making a note of it right now.
If you look at here, there was given some, on the refrigerator.
My clients did.
Anyway.
Okay. So, we don't have any numbers yet. No surprise. They're supposed to come out October 20th. We will see. There's a lot of rumbling out there from various factors across the state because of the high need for the 85,000 units in terms of the total need that's addressed in the new legislation, and how that's going to be divided among the municipalities, which will inevitably be a very large number. So we will see how this proceeds, but I really want to keep everybody informed, and since we do have time, because we don't have very many applications right now, I just wanted to take an opportunity to go into a little bit more depth about potential housing strategies. Because honestly, I don't think that we're going to have any large redevelopment projects after Lackawanna is completed. And the days of getting 60 affordable units in one large project will probably be a thing of the past. So we need to look at opportunities to spread it out in smaller projects throughout the township.
Janice, can I ask you a question?
Okay.
So you say that there's not going to be any development happening. What about the Iris?
The Iris, I have heard nothing about that. We don't have a redevelopment plan.
Everybody's familiar with the Iris. It's the lineup of small
It's the Leach
stores
building.
next to the Leach building, plus the Leach building, yeah. So that's the Iris, and there's been information out there in the real estate world that says Mr. Plasek is going to build I guess it's a 6-story building. So
Right.
that will be, if that comes apart, it's just pie in the sky at this point. but
Right
it
now,
could-
that's not part of a redevelopment plan.
Yeah.
So that would be under our existing zoning.
Yeah.
And-
That's not part of that, is it Gateway redevelopment plan?
No, we never adopted a redevelopment plan for that section, the police station. And we worked on it. It
Yeah.
was just never
Yeah, yeah, okay.
adopted. So it's possible. I don't know I guess the council might have an idea of what their temperature is to move forward with something like that. So, but I think the focus here is on, based on our conversation, is how we can provide opportunities for affordable housing that's better integrated within our neighborhoods. And what we looked at and what I tried to summarize here is
Just
there was...
forgive me, I just want to, forgive me for interrupting, I just want to make sure we're appropriately setting the table. So if I'm remembering right, and it's just a matter, we're still expecting that our obligation under the fourth round is going to be 0. Is that correct?
That, as of now, it hasn't changed. We're still a urban aid municipality. Our prospective need will be 0. We will have a present need, which is a rehabilitation component.
Right.
We will have that. I don't know
Right.
what that number will be. And
But
we
so-
were
so we're-
addressing that previously through a home rehabilitation program, which is on hold for right now, so we'll see.
So we're talking about what my grandmother would call it would be nice if.
Yes.
Got it. That's what-
Well,
Or if
Montclair's-
things change, right? We don't know if we're going to still be designated an urban aid municipality in the
Exactly, and that-
future, so.
Right, they may drop the urban aid exemption.
Correct.
And we may have an obligation, because we've had obligations in the past. So it's safer to plan for it.
I completely agree, I just wanted to make sure that we were talking
We've
about what
had
we
the
were talking
benefit
about.
of never
Yes.
being under the threat of a builder's remedy lawsuit for not providing enough affordable housing, so I think it's a very
did not
good
mean to
position.
suggest, I just wanted to make sure we were setting the
Yeah.
table for the conversation.
Yes, thank you. Yep.
So I'm not going to go through all of the background, and there were some recent articles that came out, which I've shared with you, that have excellent background information as to where we are right now, and in terms of housing demand. Listening to things that I've heard at the planning board, it's really two-pronged. We have an affordable housing need, clearly. We have a homeless problem, we have an affordability problem, but there is also this whole, what I call middle income, housing need that's missing.
Middle.
There's very few opportunities for starter homes. Prices have skyrocketed. All of you know that. Many of you have benefited from it. Makes it very difficult for young families to start here. So the idea is, how do we address that? And maybe we can do that through a new housing plan. And again, I'm not going to go through all the statistics which are in here, which I thought were really, really interesting. And once this article called Gentle Density, which I think is a great name, Gentle Density and Missing Middle Housing in New Jersey. I only have the draft copy. They provided me a draft copy. It's not yet available to the public, but once it's available to the public, I'll put the link on, because I thought it was a really great article.
It's by New Jersey Transit?
It is.
Okay.
It is. They hired an urban designer to remember the days of transit-oriented development?
Yes.
And that was an ugly word?
Yes.
I think they learned their lesson, because they're looking at transit-oriented development, but through the lens of gentle density.
Because when I want to know what works, I consult New Jersey Transit.
I just want to make sure I read that correctly.
So that's why this is their publication, and I thought it was all of the exhibits that are in the back, which I thought was really eye-opening and helped visualize how you can, and it's actually, it exists in Montclair. They use Montclair as an example of missing middle housing, because in our neighborhoods, we truly do integrate 1 and 2 families, 3 families, and 4 families, and you wouldn't even know it unless you go there and you count the meters. So we are working on an interactive land use map. We have great staff. In fact, we were tinkering with it today, getting data straight from the tax assessor's office. At our next meeting, I didn't want to bring it to tonight's meeting because I always have to check the maps to make sure that the information is correct, at least based on my knowledge of Montclair. But at the next meeting, I'll show that to you. Because it really does bring to home that even though they're single-family residential zoning, our single-family residential zones and our two-family contain a variety of use types. You'll find 2 families, you'll find 3 families in these areas. So I'd like to have a further conversation as we get better information and better mapping to explain how can we incorporate this gentle density and where. You know, we overlaid on our map the walking distance to the train stations. You know, so maybe we can look at adding gentle density within walking distance of those areas. And have a conversation as how can we provide more opportunities for starter homes in addition to the ADUs, which we already have in place. And I can't tell you how many times a day we have people coming to our office investigating how to create accessory dwelling units. It's not for everybody because they're limited in size, but there's a lot of interest in it. Of course, right now it's very expensive because construction costs are high and so is financing, but that may change in terms of the financing aspect. So anyway, that's one of the things I wanted to take a look at as we do our housing plan. Look at where are there opportunities to provide for this gentle density. But moving on to page 3 of the report that I gave you, this is the, I hate to say, low-hanging fruit, township-owned properties. We've talked about this before. We've talked about, I don't know if there's anybody who was on the planning board back in 2012, I think, when we looked at Wildwood, the township-owned properties on Wildwood Avenue.
Yeah.
Unless you were on it.
For affordable housing. It can easily be subdivided to create 4 lots, each with a 2-family house on it, on at least facing Wildwood. It's a big tract. It's a 2.63 acre tract. So
I feel like I
that's-
remember every word of that first ward debate when, between the 2012 election, when this was discussed in a heated way.
Yeah, yeah. So if anybody's driven by there today, what you see is a chain link fence and containers where Department of Community Services stores debris and products. It's a storage
Well,
yard.
but they do recycling there, so, and this will go to my general comment about how the town has given up land over the years and how it's hurt us, land,
like
schools, and
Duran
so forth.
School.
So I think we have to be careful that we only have so much of it, and getting it back is hard. So, for example, they recycle, branches, lawn material. Where else would they do that?
They don't need 2.63 acres for their recycling. They have, part of this property that's owned by the township is unimproved. It's wooded, that they don't use it for anything. So there is an opportunity And I've had conversations with the Director of Community Services, as well as the new fire chief, because they use this property as well, about how we can use this site for both, for affordable housing, particularly for the section that fronts on Wildwood Avenue, which is a residential area.
Oh, so you would make the lots as deep as the ones on the left there?
Yeah.
And that, so then the property in the back would continue to be the recycling?
Recycling and
Okay.
storage, and they use it for trench training, the fire department does. So.
And when they're doing the map, it would be great on the map is showing, we don't really see the road in, because, you drive into Brookdale, you're used to seeing, it'd be good to see the road, because the blue area must be what is the county's portion.
Yeah, you could kind of see it very faintly. It's faint in there.
It'd be good to see the road, so you kind of get a position.
Right.
Oh, I see it. You know what? It's really faint.
Yeah.
Janice, can I just say something? So, I appreciate all the work and the ideas that go into this, but I think the council kind of has to direct where we're going with affordable housing or housing in general. So, I believe that the council hopefully will be getting together and coming up with what they believe they've learned during our campaigns. What do people want? Having hearings maybe, what do people want? But I'm just throwing that out there because, I want you to know that this be a council-directed housing push, or not push, or whatever it is. Yeah,
Quite honestly, it's both.
yeah,
It's the planning board and the council.
Yeah.
Because the planning board adopts the housing element fair share plan, the council implements it. So we have to have, and that's why we have two council members here who can be part of the conversation. We also have to, I also have to have this conversation with the council.
Yes.
And.
yes. That's
we're-
what I'm saying.
And I asked, which subcommittee do I work with,
I don't think that's been decided yet.
So that's why I get direction from you, but
Yeah.
you have to understand the position I'm in. I have to have the conversation with both.
And part of the reason to do this now is there's some time pressure.
Yes. I did meet with Councilor D'Amato, and he said he supports affordable housing at this location, so, when he came to my office prior to that second meeting. So,
And can you just
council
remind us
meeting.
when this element would need to be passed?
It would have to be adopted by June 30th, because I have to file it with the state on June 30th, so I need
So fully adopted.
fully adopted. And although it's not clear in the new regulations, and I keep asking all the other planners and the lawyers, traditionally, when you file a housing plan with the state, it has to be accompanied with a resolution of support from the council. Because honestly, the plan itself is adopted by the planning board, but we have to work with the council. The council adopts the implementation ordinances. So that's how it was handled in the past.
Okay.
So that's the deadline. And that's why I'm having these conversations now, particularly since we have time here at the planning board.
Right. I just want to make sure everyone keeps that in mind, that
Yep.
this, even though it feels like we've got a lot of time, there's really not a lot of time to go through this,
Exactly.
given all the different pieces and groups that need to come together. And I see Mr. Scott's here, presumably representing the Housing Commission.
To Councilor Lockman's point about the council driving a large share of the conversation, and if those include community meetings or hearings or whatever you referred to, I think that information would be helpful to the planning board in kind of coming up with that housing plan. But those sorts of things just require the resources that only a council can provide. And so I'm wondering, I don't want the planning board to wait, but making sure that the planning board is able to take advantage of that, and/or the council puts the resources necessary for the planning board to have a full understanding of the public's desire and need for affordable housing would be very helpful to the board.
Yeah, we need to get our act together at the council about what we as a team.
I want to be
believe
kinder
this.
about it.
Yeah, no, but I'm just realistic here.
And Jake, I just want, when you say resources, what do you mean by
Money.
resources? Okay.
We need money.
Why, do you
What
think
for
we need to
what?
hire a consultant?
I think we need to make sure that there's the money, if we need to hire a consultant, that we can do that. If we need to have community meetings, that we have the resources to gather information from them. in a way that's representative rather than just who can show up on a Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a problem.
You know,
Well, at a minimum, and I put a resolution before the council to put out an RFP for an affordable housing attorney. That resolution got pulled. We need an affordable housing attorney. We need a new administrative agent. And the council has, that resolution to appoint those positions was pulled from the council agenda. So,
And I think it's because of what I'm saying. We need to have a kind of a holistic view, and that's not, rather than looking at things piecemeal. And that hasn't happened yet.
Do we have a committee for this? Maybe I missed this.
excuse me,
Or a
what?
subcommittee? I didn't think so. Right? It seems like this conversation would benefit from the appropriate airspace, and I wonder if that's a committee or a subcommittee, but it doesn't seem like this is a good starting point for conversation, good table setting, I think.
Oh, it's so much worse than that, because, I mean, so look, I've been really privileged to get to know the wonderful people on this planning board in the, 4+ years that I've been here, and I mean, and we've got a bunch of new members, and I can tell you to a moral certainty that we are going to have different opinions.
Oh, I'm sure.
And to the point where a committee, I mean, any three of us would be 1/3 of the opinions that are going to be expressed on this subject. And I mean, when Jacob starts talking about consultants, I'm like, we're nowhere close. We're not even in the same area code as getting ready for a consultant yet, because we have to have very frank discussions that are going to be rough, because we're not going to agree on this stuff. And everybody's voice needs to be heard and respected. And there's going to be a lot of opinions, and everybody's viewpoint is going to be worth hearing and worth considering. And that's why we need to get started now, is because, I mean, you're right. I mean, we've got to rock and roll and let it all hang out.
It's probably not this. Like, we need more time.
Yeah,
That's one thing we don't have. We don't have time.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the benefit is we do have because we don't have a very busy agenda, we can have these frank discussions with the full board, which really honestly helps me.
Okay.
Because Jeff, you're absolutely right. I mean, you get a lot of work done at the subcommittee level, but then you come to the full board, and that's not the position of the full planning board.
Yeah, because this can't be a decisions are made by those who show up kind of thing.
Exactly.
We've all got to talk. Yeah.
Which is why there may be some edgy ideas that I throw out there or that other members throw. And that's how we vet them.
And what you've done here is really useful, because knowing where the properties are that are possibilities is invaluable, and we couldn't do it without this.
Right.
But this is not reflective of the will of the community. Maybe it is, maybe it's not, we don't know, and there's a lot of voices that have to be heard about whether and to what extent these properties are going to be exploited for this purpose. But knowing where they are is terrific, and thank you for doing it.
But I would hope that if the council can decide how they want to, who they want to appoint to work through this process, so that I can work with them and have these conversations, and we could get this done, because it is a tight time frame. That would be very helpful. So in addition to Wildwood Avenue, which is not new to the planning board, we also have these 2 properties on New Street that were part of our previous housing element and fair share plan. They were not developed for affordable housing. We did go to an RFP. I think I might have it. I don't know if I put the year here, but there was at one point, probably around 2014, where we issued, or maybe 2015, we issued a request for a proposal to develop this property for 2 two-family houses. At that point, the council decided not to proceed with the proposals that we received, which was from Home Corps. So it's remained as township-owned land. And the recommendation was to put 2 two-family houses in there. I think 100% affordable would still, on both of these properties, would give us the most bang for our buck in terms of getting truly affordable units. There is money available. I've been doing my research and talking with affordable housing professionals, doing a lot of outreach of people who've built 100% affordable housing. It is available using funds from the state Affordable Housing Trust Fund for small projects of no more than, 10 or 20 units. These are certainly small and would qualify. They all require a municipal component. The municipality would have to throw some money towards it as well. which we could do with our housing trust fund, but it is doable, and it is doable at 100% affordable. If the
I'd just like
township
to,
wants to do it.
sorry. With respect to those specific units, they're on a narrow street with limited parking. It's like an open lot. I mean, the alternative is that you leave it open, you use it as a mini park, something like that. The people, that's helpful to the people who live in the area as well. It's a densely populated area. So not every square foot of publicly owned land should be affordable housing, in my view. I mean, there are things that, really enhance the people's quality of life who already live there, and having a little park might be nice.
And in addition to the
Mr.
Glenfield
Mr.
Park,
Campbell, I
there's a
can't hear
park
what
at
you're
the
saying.
end of the street to Washington, where Charles H. Bullock School is right down the street. And so we discussed that with the neighbors and some other people, not recently, but I guess maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. And the feeling was not that that would be the best use at that time, but certainly, worth looking into. But because of the fact that that park is, a hop, skip, and a jump even closer than Glenfield Park right in front of it, the overwhelming sentiment at that time was not, but it's good to go back and revisit it and see where we end up. People
Right.
thought that it might in fact be become an area for people perhaps to hang out in a less appropriate way than what it was intended in the middle of the block, and to finish the streetscape would offer some additional much-needed housing. But, I mean, it's something to always consider.
Right. Exactly.
Janice, question for you. How are we defining success in this conversation?
Excuse me?
How are we defining success?
I don't think I'm
what's our-
measuring
what's-
this by success. I think what I'm doing is getting input from various perspectives to decide how, you, the members of the planning board, are the policymakers. What, do you have enough information, what additional information do you
I'm-
need to help cement your recommendation or suggestions on these initiatives?
I'm curious maybe if it's not for you, that's okay. Just let me know. I'm curious, what is our goal? So if it doesn't have to be articulated as success, I just want to better understand what our goal is, because it seems like we're like very small slices of the pie, which may or may not move the needle incrementally. I don't know, but I can't understand the value. So that's what I'm trying to understand.
Well, I think it's what we need, there is an ongoing demand for affordable housing.
Okay.
Particularly because, and I can give you when we do the we have to do a housing plan, and we will have all the data in there. I didn't want to throw all the data at you right now in terms of, I've given it to you in the past.
Yeah.
In terms of what our housing need is. How do we address that? The easiest way to address it without increasing, density in terms of private development is, again, starting off with the vacant township-owned land. That's point one. We then move to other areas, and how can we creatively provide opportunities for affordable housing? Now, granted, there's other uses for these properties. Maybe there's another use would be more appropriate. The only way we're going to determine that is by talking about it. So that's what I'm looking for, input.
Can I just define, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, isn't the baseline, the absolute baseline is what the COA, for lack of a better
Yeah,
word,
right.
fourth ward round is? If they say we have to do 100 houses, then that's the baseline. If the policy is of the town to do more than that, then that's separate from the baseline. But the baseline is whatever we're
Well, I
told to
mean,
do
the
by COA.
baseline right now will probably be 0.
Well, we don't know that. We'll know that for sure.
I anticipate it'll
Yeah,
be
yeah,
0.
yeah,
But
but-
on the other hand, we may have a really high rehabilitation number.
Right.
In the past, when our rehabilitation number was high, we addressed that in our approved plan through new construction. So there's a lot of perspectives to be considered in the conversation. So,
When you address a rehabilitation number through new construction, is it a one-to-one where literally you're building a new unit in place of the old unit? Or is it just you can build new construction and that just kind of
if you're not.
filters out the...
If any newly constructed unit, which is credit, if you're a planner, if it's a credit-worthy, COA credit, if it's a newly constructed unit, that you don't need to fulfill a new construction obligation, you can use that to address your rehabilitation requirement.
because, I mean, but just to really kind of get at your question, which I think is a really good one, there are some communities in this state that would define success as suus. And we'll put this off until the cows come home, and, you know, the lawsuit will take 22 years, and we'll build the housing in 22 and a half when the thing is over, and we've got no other choice, and we'll all be dead. That's how some communities would define success. You might define success as not getting sued and doing the minimum. You might define success as making 51% of the people in the town happy, because you know you're not going to make 100% happy, and you're not going to make 60% happy because people are going to have disparate views. I mean, so you're asking the right question. Getting an answer in and of itself is going to be difficult because even on this board there might be differences of views as among, and those are just I've used 3 examples on a long spectrum. Sure. Where it could be anything in the middle, and so. Yeah, but it's a wonderful question, to which unfortunately I have no, my answer is not going to be the mayor's answer, and Mayor and I agree on many things, we disagree on some things.
But we all have an opportunity to voice our opinions and influence what we see as success.
Right, and I think success is getting a new housing element put together.
Yeah, that's
I mean, ultimately that is.
And I don't want to be sued. I ran the state division of law. I've been sued enough. I'm done.
Right. I think
So we've got 2 people who have clear ideas for success. Let's work from there.
start a consensus. Yeah, I mean, that's really success, is to get a new housing element fair share plan adopted by this body that can be certified as being accepted by the council. That's ultimately what we're trying to do. The road to get there, like Ms. Talley says, it's going to be a lot of discussion. It's going to be a lot of disagreement. I agree with Mr. Jacobson. We're going to have definitely differing opinions on this board.
Local context.
Right, and so the idea.
All I can offer you, my friend.
Yeah. So that's the idea is how can we craft a plan that works for everybody, or that everybody can buy into?
Yeah.
And it may have some of these elements of taking public lands and saying we should have that for housing. It may not. I was going to ask Ms. Talley, is it worth the board members refreshing themselves by reading the current housing element as to kind of what we're ultimately trying to adopt?
I mean, the existing housing element, going back to 2009.
I know it's old. Is that
It's not
helpful?
an easy read. It's very, it's almost like reading a housing accountancy. It's a numbers game. You have so many boxes that you have to check in terms of rental housing and supportive housing and these bonus credits, and it's basically how we checked all those boxes. So it's a little bit hard to.
Is there another town's housing element that you think we should look at to say this is about what we would expect Montclair to deliver?
I'll take that into consideration. I will reissue the 2009 plan.
Okay.
I was going through the history, and I know I've gone through the history several times here in several presentations, but we had our housing plans certified by COA in 2009. We were one of the first and only towns to get certified before everybody went into mass litigation. By 2015, all of the third round obligation was before the courts, and then the numbers changed. And that's when we came up with a number of 0. So that number is a little bit different from what was in our housing plan and what I presented to everybody, which was what was in our approved housing plan. As of 2015, they changed the requirements, and now as a urban aid municipality, our number was 0, which is why we did not go for a declaratory judgment. I think it's what we decided not to go for a declaratory judgment with a revised housing plan because our number was 0. All we had to do was to get the judge to approve our spending plan. So it's somewhat a convoluted history, but that's how things change. So right now, our number will be 0. That may change. So we have to, that'll be our starting point, and we'll do a plan for 0, but again, we have to acknowledge that may, in 5 years or in 1 year, or whatever, that may change, and we have to continue to protect ourselves.
Hey, Janice, just a question about that. When they give you the number, or lack of number, the 0, How long is that in place for? Is it a 10-year horizon
It's
that we're
10
looking
years.
at? Wow.
But it's always litigation.
What? No, but that's what they estimate for 10 years?
It's a 10-year
Yeah,
plan.
Okay,
So you plan for 10 years out, but things change.
yeah.
And
So, as we all know.
so, look, the background section that you circulated with the memo, the last paragraph in the background section talked about the fact that as even as household size has shrunk, the median size of houses has grown, and you talked about houses built since, what was it, between 2000 and 2009. As I read that, I knew you were trying to be factual. I knew you were trying to provide us with a useful
Right.
set of facts, and that's right, great. For Montclair specifically, if I were asking a bunch of questions about this, one of the things I would ask is, so when, in other words, what's the median age of the homes in Montclair that are above that average size? And you're going to say that a lot of them were built when Abe Lincoln was president, including mine.
Yep.
And so, the discussion is a little different, because our issue is not that people over the last 20 years in Montclair have allowed McMansions to be built. The issue is that in Montclair, part of what makes Montclair Montclair is the housing stock that's existed for 100 years. And so we just have to be mindful of that.
You're absolutely correct. However, let me give you an example, how this fact, and I'm really glad that Mr. Harrison is here, because he's seen a lot of these applications for multifamily projects, and I think you have too, where applicants come in with really large unit sizes. And particularly in some of our in our neighborhoods, the sizes of the new developers are building these units to fit a footprint, and they're much larger than the other apartments and household sizes in the area because they can build it, which obviously increases the rents. So perhaps we can change our thinking in terms of the new units that are created, not the ones that currently exist, but the ones that are created so that they can match the sizes of the units in the neighborhood, and so they're not out of character. And that's one, I don't know if we can do that legally, maybe, but can we have a conversation? I'll just throw the idea out there.
And that, you've gotten a long way in life without my advice, I'm going to offer it anyway. That was much more persuasive than the paragraph in the background section, because that was an idea and not a fact that you didn't intend to have the import that it had to some eyes.
I thought it was an interesting fact, and it percolated in my mind about how the sizes of houses, dwelling units have increased dramatically. And then I know they're pretty big in Montclair, which is, in certain areas, but not all of them. But I think we can better match the size of the units to where not only the demand is to get this missing middle housing, but to keep it affordable without having to go through deed restrictions and affordability controls. Maybe, again, it's just an idea.
Yeah.
Because look, that daughter who called me from college, we moved here when the kid was not 2. And I remember every minute of the housing search process, and when we rolled up on the house we're living in, and my wife and I looked at each other and said, this is where we want to live. And we knew about Montclair, and we knew what we were doing, and we moved here. We've been here ever since. I've raised 2 kids here, and
I'm in the same boat.
I know, and so, but there are 40,000 stories,
Yeah.
many not like mine,
Right.
all valid, and trying to figure out what we want to do with the town is not so easy, because we've got to not blow up those moments while creating moments for people who don't have my kind of means to live here too. I mean, I got it, but that's not so easy.
Right.
But we've got a really good cross-section here on this board, and I feel like, if we do it in good faith, we'll make 48% of the people happy.
I have no doubt we'll be able to come to some consensus. You know, that's what this board has shown over the years.
Yeah.
We'll be negotiating and arguing and, you know, debating, but that's fine. That's why we do have this great cross-section that's here. So I know we'll get there, and it just kind of strikes me that maybe one of the things we need is, you know, it's almost like from you, Ms. Talley, and maybe from anybody on the board, what about these ideas? And have a few bullets, like here's some of the ideas that are out there. We'd like feedback from the board about these
Right.
4 things tonight, or at our next meeting.
So along the lines of what we're talking about and the size of the units, if we could have some type of policy or requirement that the size of the new units, and if we could get the data that they match or complement the size of the units in the neighborhood, maybe that's one way through zoning we can ensure that we're getting this missing middle housing. You know, if you have an area with a lot of Cape Cods, they're usually pretty small. And there are sections of the town where you have quite a few of them, and maybe it's, I don't know, when they come in, somebody comes in with a multifamily project, we can have them, instead of, you know, making these units 2,000, 2,500 square feet with 3 bedrooms, they could be smaller.
Yeah.
Well, the easy way to do it
And-
would be not to
Okay.
have zoning based
Mr.
on.
Ian Wiley.
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Have Mr. Neiman go.
Oh,
He's
sorry.
been patiently waiting, and
Sorry
I think
about
I interrupted him last, so I'm sorry about that.
I think you made a very good point, Janice, and I think a way to look at it is we get very fixated on the number of units, and so an 8-unit complex with 2,500 square foot or 2,300 square foot units is going to have a lot different footprint than one with, say, 1,200 square foot
Right.
units, but it's still coming out as an 8-unit complex,
Right.
right? And so by making sure that there's flexibility within the zoning code, to not just do the stick of you have to build in conformity with the neighborhood around you, have the carrot of if you build a more modest dwelling, like we're going to make it easier for you to get over these hurdles that may exist, or make sure that the zoning code isn't acting as an inhibitor to building a more modest unit and making, you know, maybe 3 lots with 1,200 square foot homes rather than 2 lots with, you know,
Right.
2,500 square foot homes.
They've got a park. See, that's our favorite debate.
Oh, yeah, of course. And by taking away, say, parking minimums, you lower the land costs of construction, and land being the most expensive thing here in Montclair.
Right.
That's a serious statement as well as playing off Mr. Jacobson's point.
Mr. Ian Wally.
Similar point, you know, regulating in units per acre. Instead of units per acre, just make it floor area ratio. So you have a certain size building rather than number of units, because if you give units, the units will grow to be larger. If you say you can fit so much in this box, you might say, well, gee, I might build 12 in there instead of 8, because I still get the box. The limit is the you know,
Is the scale, the
it's the
massing.
scale, the mass of it,
Massing.
rather than just take away the units per acre, because then the incentive is just to grow the units. Because once you have the kitchen, bath, and the plumbing, you know, once you've got that, adding a bedroom is super cheap, because it's just sticks, and it's not, there's not a lot of
Less infrastructure.
less infrastructure to do it, but it changes if you can't put that cheap bedroom on. You might just build another, you know, unit. That might be one way to.
Right.
Mayor?
But parking goes with it, I'm sorry. Parking is key in that, because,
Janice, just in terms of the units having to match or complement that which is there, I think it might hurt us on the flip side. So if there's a very large properties, you know, where all the neighboring houses are extremely large, and someone wants to come in there and put something more modest and something more affordable for the missing middle age group, if we, you know, stick it really hard that they can't, you know, that it has to match, then we will probably be denying an opportunity to spread some of the wonderful missing middle housing to other wards.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think that's why we need to look at the different zone districts differently. Clearly, you're not going to, in some neighborhoods, we want to keep the smaller units. Clear that that's not probably what we want to see in some of the other areas. And we can talk about perhaps converting some of these single-family properties to multifamily properties, you know, 2 or 3. I'm not ready to do that, to discuss that in depth tonight. That's why I've had this interactive land use map. We went to the tax assessor's office today, and we're able to get data, at least from the tax assessor's office, exactly where the 2 families are, the 3 families, the 4 families, the 5 families, and we're able to load it onto a map. So at our next meeting, I'll be able to use that interactive map, and we can see in the residential zone districts where we have a concentration of these different or higher density residential, or I should say multifamily units in single-family residential zones. And we'll do some photos, you probably won't be able to see them from the street, they'll look just like a single-family house. We know it's there. So I'd like to explore that in more depth at a following meeting, because I'm just not ready to do it tonight, because I got the data today.
All right, good.
Mr. Campbell?
You felt it, you must have felt it.
I did.
Yeah. Very curious soul. Do we have data on families or individuals that have left the town over the last 5 to 10 years that might fit within that middle demographic or economic range that we're discussing?
No, I don't think we have information on, I don't know. I haven't even looked. I mean, I know we can get from the census information the number of families that have left. I don't know if I can drill that down to find out, what their income category was, which would kind of tell you who's leaving.
I'm curious about the category, yes, but also size of home, right? So we can understand what we're solving for. Is it 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom? We don't don't know right now.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll be able to get that level of information.
Okay.
I wonder if there's a way to overlay like census tract information for income with the information from the tax assessor's office
Right.
and somehow put them together and perhaps get close to what Mr. Campbell's asking for?
We'll take a look at it.
That'd be an
and we'll see.
interesting
Like a starting
exercise.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I can continue to the next township-owned property that's on the list, which is George Washington Field. I know Councilor Lockman brought that up at the last meeting. I provided a little bit more information and a map here. So it's true, right across, if you look at the map on page 5, this is in Glen Ridge. The zoning regulations are in Glen Ridge. Right across the street is their 4-story affordable housing project. Adjacent to it is Washington School, which was owned by the township and was converted into condos. I'm not quite sure which year that was.
For 9 years. And we played on that. That was a playground. So this is, I spent
Yeah.
hours and hours on that George Washington Field, and still kept the name of the school. So here's another thing, just like don't take the recycling. I drove by, there was kids playing pickup soccer last night, driving by. We need field. We just have fewer and fewer places for kids to go, and I wish.
That's
I coach-
anecdotal. I'd like to know exactly what the needs of the kids
Well,
I
are.
took photographs of kids playing soccer.
No, we should probably have more data on the
We need data.
needs,
Plus, I
on the
can-
field needs. However, anecdotally, that's a big Little League field. I coach soccer, and that field is used all day long. We've seen the schedule that both Glen Ridge and Montclair, share that field, and it seems like it's constantly in use, and the fields across the town seem to be constantly in use. So I agree with you, I would like more data, but if you're going to take away playing fields, I think we have to be very
I
careful.
would have an
very,
argument.
very
yeah.
careful.
But do you
I
want
also would-
playing fields or do you want housing, affordable housing?
I would like
I
to
go on
define
both.
success
On
as
both.
not
Yeah.
starting a range war against our neighbor. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think
we
that
got
exists
we got
already.
other fish to fry with Glen
Yeah.
Ridge that does not involve starting a shooting war over this.
But I think the discussion would apply if there's any other fields that we'd be looking at in Montclair Township. I think we have to be very cautious of that.
Yeah.
Fields
I
are
agree
at a
it has to
premium.
be cautious, but it's out there, it's owned by us, and we should take it into account when we're thinking about publicly owned property. And, so it's a big field, and it also has artificial turf on it, which will need to be replaced. And that was what happened when we, right, Jenna, we have a shared agreement back 10 years ago with Glen Ridge to put in artificial turf. We shared the cost of it. Now we have we have turf wars now in Montclair about putting back artificial turf. So that's going to be a problem.
And that is, will be a separate debate.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
the availability of the fields, though, versus using them for housing is germane to this discussion.
It
And
is,
again, I think we just have to be extremely cautious about taking away fields. We were scheduled to have a practice at one of the elementary schools, and we showed up and there was a JV game going on. So there is at an elementary school, there is clearly a need for fields in this town. I would like to see more data again, but this I would be extremely cautious of.
I think the discussion of using publicly owned land to source housing is functionally a discussion of capacity, right? Montclair is 5 and change, 6 and change square miles, only has so much land in an area that's one of the most desirable and densely populated and attractive in the world, frankly. And so what we're running into is a capacity problem, and we've ate up all the land to build housing of some kind of another, commercial development of some kind of another. And we're running up on the capacity we've zoned for, functionally, right? We've said certain parts of land, the town are usable for X, Y, and Z. We're running out of places where you can do those things that aren't already being done there. And so we do have this land capacity in a literal sense. Town's not getting bigger. Thankfully, also not getting smaller. And we've used up most of the public land for various public uses, good, bad, or otherwise. And so now we're at this problem. And one of the ways to open up capacity is utilizing more township-owned land that hadn't previously been used for housing or something else. Or we can change the constraints that we put on the land that's already there via the zoning capacity. And Montclair did that for a long time because there wasn't zoning, and we had 2 family houses next to 3 family houses next to 1 family houses all throughout. And I think bringing back the flexibility and allowing for the flexibility to incorporate those modest uses and changes in use throughout the town is a way to increase the capacity for housing and affordable housing in Montclair without materially changing the character of our community. It's already a constituent part of our community.
So in case you hadn't noticed, that's a different definition of success. If we're keeping track of them, that's another way.
I'd also like to not get sued. I'm going to add that one in.
So this leads me to the next phase of the analysis, which is property in the township that's owned by both faith-based and nonprofit organizations. So the list that you see starting on table 1 includes both. All the churches, I think I took out the cemeteries, because clearly we don't want to build on the cemeteries.
That's a different kind of housing.
I've seen that movie, Janice.
Again, I included items that are owned and operated by nonprofit organizations, just to put on your thing, if that nonprofit went out of business and that property had to be adapted to a new use, should we consider allowing or encouraging adaptive reuse of those properties for affordable housing? Or if there's excess land, I can think of some houses of worship that have excess land that really isn't used for anything that could be converted for affordable housing. So again, it's not an easy process, at least with the religious organizations. I've done some outreach with them to talk about how the process works, brought together some professionals and introduced them who build affordable housing, who partner with churches. They build, it's either affordable housing, it's always 100% affordable, or they do supportive housing with some special needs group that they partner with the houses of worship to create those opportunities. It's just, we don't, as uses change, as these properties turn over, it would be a lost opportunity if they sold it to a developer to build market rate housing because they get the most money for that, and lose the opportunity to integrate affordable housing onto these properties, which are scattered. And I don't have a map here. I will present that at the next meeting. They are pretty much scattered around town, and you'll see that it would be a nice way to, when these opportunities arise, to push it into some of the other wards, so it's not all concentrated in the Fourth Ward or along Bloomfield Avenue, which it is right now.
The thing is, I mean, I'm just going to throw this out as a question, because I really mean it that way. So, let's imagine for a minute that the township owns land that is particularly valuable for its ability to be somebody's house, not affordable housing. And I'm just going to pick a number out of the air. Let's say the township could sell that land for $3 million, because it's worth $3 million to someone to build market rate housing there. And for that $3 million, the township could turn around, or make it the developer's responsibility, or make it our responsibility to find other property on which we could build more housing than we could on that site that we sold for the hypothetical $3 million. Now, we don't want all of that to become, we don't want the Fourth Ward to be bought up for that purpose. We want to spread it around the town, and so we would put restraints on that. But is what I just described something that is palatable, or does it become too complicated and we should only focus on the property that we own? Because if we start doing this, it starts becoming what Mayor Jackson tried to do with swaps and building a municipal building in Lackawanna Plaza, and it just collapsed under its own weight.
It's incredibly difficult to locate affordable housing. That's why we don't allow developers to transfer their units someplace else. We've only done that in one case, because even for the township to acquire property for affordable housing, we went through this last year when we tried to acquire 34 Union Street for affordable housing. There was huge resistance to that, and it went nowhere. So it's very difficult to do that. That's why it's always preferable, enormously preferable, to build it on site. That's the plain fact. So let me throw out, look at Hillside Square. That was a church. And they did a beautiful job converting it to offices. But it could have been converted to affordable housing. It would have been kind of interesting units. I don't know how they would have laid it out, but it's been done before. So that was a lost opportunity. And in fact, when they separated, they subdivided their property. They sold an extra piece. At this point, it was not owned by the church anymore, and now it's going to have a single-family house on it. So there was a missed opportunity to use excess land there for affordable housing. And there's other churches where we've had missed opportunities where they've sold it off for market rate development. So at least if we encourage them to consider affordable housing by writing it into our housing plan and writing it into our ordinances, at least it has a chance. We can have the discussion to see if it works. I think it would be, there's opportunities where it would be appropriate.
Buildings turn.
I think a lot of the faith-based organizations are having discussions because their numbers are down. They have excess facilities. What do they do with them? It's difficult for them to develop and to build, because then they have to build consensus along their governing boards, and they don't always have the same opinion. So it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen en masse, but at least if we raise the issue, there'll be the thought that, hey, maybe we can put affordable housing here rather than selling it for market rate development, and maybe there's a different option.
Yeah.
And it might
So-
be a piece of that. It wouldn't be the whole congregation necessarily with the excess, right? I mean, they have buildings that are collapsing in on themselves in some areas.
Yeah.
And we just did a subdivision for one of the churches on Cooper Ave, just a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
So there is available, some of them do have available land that could be developed. for this purpose.
Believe me, I've had inquiries about excess land for the Catholic Church that's just down the street here. So that's just one example. There's been a lot of them. They're looking at their options, and I think this is an opportunity to put this discussion, this use on the table for consideration. And not only that, the township can partner with them, and I'm trying to elevate the discussion. There's other partners out there who can help them do this.
Has
So-
the state come to any decision yet regarding the faith-based institution?
They have a person who, I don't know if you know Milton Hobbs?
Yeah.
From the state. That's his position. I've talked to him about it as well. I don't know if they have any funding, but he's the one who's helping to coordinate it with the municipalities and get the word out and work with the faith-based organizations to see this as an opportunity, so.
But they haven't come up with a faith-based, any legislation yet regarding that?
No, not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Hey, Janice, I have a question about the concept of, say, for example, Wildwood, building on Wildwood, affordable housing there. Is the concept that the town would build the housing and own the housing and collect rents and be the landlord? Or is the concept that you would selling off this affordable housing and therefore
Well-
selling off our land?
We haven't gone down to that level of discussion, but I would certainly not recommend that the township own it.
So you
I would recommend, because I think it's much more difficult for the town to manage something like
Yeah.
that. I
So
would
that
rec-
was the Wildwood plan whenever it was introduced several decades ago?
It was to sell the lots.
It was to sell the lots.
And
yeah.
you'd sell the lots with deed restrictions in place to ensure that they're, I'll give you a little, under the current uniform housing affordability controls in effect at the state level, when the township, or when these units are created as for sale units, there's a rule that caps the resale value of those units. It's called the 95-5 rule. So that whoever, if it's a for sale unit, whoever's you sell that unit to, it's deed restricted for 30 years. I think it might be 40 years now, but it's deed restricted for a certain number of years, and the maximum resale value is capped. The municipalities have the right of first refusal when they want to sell it. So, and that's either within that term of that 30-year deed restriction or the first resale after that time expires. So there's a lot of requirements in there that are intended to ensure that even if it's a for sale unit, that over the long run, it's affordable. And it maintains its affordability.
So just to be clear, so we are selling off the land at a lower price probably, right?
Well, we haven't even had that conversation
No, I'm saying,
yet,
but that's the theory, right?
I think that depending on what the funding source is, yeah, we'd be selling off the land, and it'd probably be at a deep discount.
Yeah.
Or donating the land to build affordable housing.
So therefore taxpayers who, are losing the opportunity to earn money on that land, if it were sold at market rate.
No,
Yeah.
once you sell it, they pay taxes.
They pay taxes,
Yeah.
lower taxes because they're affordable housing.
The taxes are based
Yeah,
on.
okay, just want to
yeah.
understand, I'm not
Yeah.
passing judgment, I just want to understand the full concept.
Right. So in a overall discussion is perhaps we can tap into, and again, I have it on, at the next meeting, I'll have the interactive map, and it'll show you where these properties are located. For instance, I know I have on here the properties owned by the Montclair Historic Society. I don't anticipate that those would turn over, but you never know, so you could structure this however, as what would fall under either faith-based or nonprofit organizations. And if it is a for sale unit, then they would be paying taxes, so.
Question for you. So in the Fourth Ward, there's been a number over the years of foreclosed properties that have been bought and fixed up and are sell or rent for high amounts. Is there any way that the town can get first crack at buying first foreclosed properties?
It depends upon, yeah, we can do that. It depends upon the sales price. You know, we have a list of foreclosed properties. It's difficult for the town to purchase because by the time the town is done, ready to move and has a council resolution, it's usually already sold.
So we're not nimble enough. That's really the problem.
We're not
We're not
nimble
nimble
at
at all. Yeah.
So that's part of the problem. And then, so the final analysis, I looked at our non-conforming properties in residential zones. And interesting, we just did an analysis of what are these properties? I mean, Applegate Farms is one of them. Not that I ever want anything to happen to Applegate Farm. But if they went out of business, could there be an overlay zone there perhaps, and they wanted to build a housing there, that maybe we could get some affordable housing? The Commonwealth Club, that's another, it's a commercial property, although I think it must be in a residential zone because it's on this list. The Sawtell Learning Center on South Mountains, also a commercial property in a residential zone. So again, what the consideration is perhaps we can put an overlay zone, so if these ever convert to a different use, that maybe we could take this into consideration.
What is the Sawtell property? I'm not familiar with
It's
that.
a school for special needs children.
It's that big red brick building? It's a red brick building?
It's an
Yeah.
estate that
Yeah,
was
yeah.
converted.
I know that, thank you.
Yeah. So. And that's all that I had for tonight's discussion. Just as we move forward, I really thought that these graphics from that, and I pulled them from this gentle density report that was prepared by New Jersey Transit. I think he did a really good job of trying to show how gentle density could be developed and the lot sizes. So when I come back at the next meeting and we further this discussion, and I'll bring my interactive map, we can drill down on all of these properties and all these neighborhoods and kind of see where are there opportunities for affordable housing, for gentle density. I wouldn't even be able to give you a number right now. This is all completely conceptual, and if you think that maybe this is a good direction, we can talk about how we can. I don't think I could even come up with numbers. It would be just identifying these properties, so when they do turn over, we provide them with a realistic opportunity to provide affordable housing.
Is there, I was just going to say, in the interactive map
Yeah.
that you're putting together, is there a way to overlay any rental income or the monthly rents that we have as you kind of like distinguish between the 1, 2, 3, 4 family residential areas where we can actually see what those rents are going for? I'm willing to bet that there's a substantive amount of housing in Montclair that is not considered to be affordable, but is borderline, right? And so I just to be able to see that data, is that a relatively realistic lift?
I don't know, Mr. Tax Assessor?
So tax assessors sometimes should be receiving each year, but sometimes receive income and expense data from property owners. That data is confidential, so the assessor wouldn't be able to share those rents.
So if I could, then the best I can do is get it at the block group level.
Yeah.
You can't get it at the individual property level. It's really tough.
Yeah, except for the big buildings with the $4,000 a month single, apartment.
If
On the
you've ever
website.
looked at a block group, I mean, they're
Yeah.
not, it's smaller than a census tract, but it's bigger than a neighborhood.
Right, it's something.
So,
Janice, doesn't the rent control board collect rents?
I can ask them for it. I don't believe,
I don't think so.
I don't
No.
believe that they have, well, when I've asked for lists from them, I've been told it's confidential, so I will start a conversation. I don't know if their data is in any kind of database yet, so I suspect, in my last conversation, I think they were trying to get a database program up and running, or actually purchased. I don't even know if they've purchased it yet. So that might be something that's a year or two down the road. Because she's shown me her files, her paper files, which are all neatly organized, but I don't think we have the data yet. So, any other questions? Any suggestions on different ways we can go, you know? I'm open to it.
So when we were talking about George Washington, and some of the group was saying, well, you know, keep the open space for the fields, we need the fields, and others were saying possibility of some housing, just reminded me of in Union City, where they have the housing, on top of the housing, they have one of the most amazing fields that I've been to, and they actually have lights, because it's up so high, and the way they have them down, it doesn't affect the residents
Where's
around
this?
it. Union City.
Oh, Union City.
Yeah, have you been to that field? It's awesome. The Cobras go over there to play.
I used to live in
But, you know, I was just thinking about, well, you know, we'll compromise. We
time
can
ago.
have the
Yeah.
keep the housing, have
Yeah.
some, you know, middle market housing, and then up top have the field so that people can play.
Well, that's something, let me look at the Union City model.
Far too much density for myself, but I just thought I'd throw it out there for people who want to get more creative than I.
Okay.
I'd just like to say one more thing. So one of the issues in town that we're facing is stormwater and
Yep.
flooding. And so you think of building all over, well, not all over the place, I'm exaggerating, but adding more building, if you're losing open space. So that, you have to weigh that. You know, do you lose the open space and therefore you exacerbate the flooding issues? I don't know, it's just, I'm just throwing that out there, something to think
That's a
about.
valid concern, but
Yeah.
remember, you can always build in detention.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I'm thinking once again about New Street. So there's this little lot, and I don't know what their flooding issue is, if they have a flooding issue, but you have a small lot, why not leave that open in terms of capturing, you know, water and not having it stormwater runoff?
Right.
Another reason, just another way of looking at our open lots.
Mhm. Yep,
Okay,
okay,
good discussion.
all right.
Do we have,
For me, as a newbie, I guess it's very helpful.
Oh, good. I actually really enjoy giving these presentations and having these discussions, so thank you. And wait till you see the interactive map.
You're so excited about that.
I am.
I'm coming by tomorrow to see it.
I appreciate a good map, there's
It-
not much better.
Yeah, yeah. You know, if any of you have used our interactive zoning map, which is like the model for an interactive zoning map, and Graham, who's now with Topology, he's bringing that model to other municipalities who are discovering. We were the first ones to do it. It's really helpful. So we're doing the same concept to evaluate housing properties and housing issues. So, anyway,
No, they're not easy to build.
no.
do we have any committee reports?
We haven't had any meetings.
Okay, I didn't think so, I just forgot to ask since
But
it's
what's going on with the
agenda.
master plan review?
The master plan review is on hold until because we're focusing
Get our
on
okay.
housing.
Hmm.
I started working on it, and then I had to switch gears to housing. So we will get there,
Is that due in '26?
26.
Okay.
The 25 deadline is a bigger issue. June 30th, 2025.
Right.
But you know what, now that we have through this process and we're evaluating all the residential neighborhoods, I think it ties into
Yeah, of course
our
it does.
housing, the master plan issues.
Yeah.
What month in 26 is the master plan review due?
The housing plan?
No, the master
the
plan
master-
in 26.
the
Is it
reexamination
early in the
report.
year, mid-year,
I'll
end of
have
year?
to double check.
Okay.
I'll draw it up next week for you.
Nice.
We did a fair bit of
You
work
guys
on it
are
already,
getting
so
it.
We're doing a lot
it's
of work
not.
on it, yeah. And I think we know what the recommendation's going to be, is we need a new master plan. So
Right,
I don't think it's going to be that hard.
yeah. I think several groups in town have put a lot of work into it already, so it should be,
Yeah.
I won't say easy, but not overly difficult
I
to
was
put
going,
together.
the way I structured it was going through a detailed review of the unified plan. I don't think we need to drill down that deeply, because I think what we need to do is just redo the master plan, because there's been so much change.
Yes.
I know. Hopefully you'll give us the money.
Well, talking about money, we're having a austere budget this year because
told.
you've been told that, yeah.
I've been told,
Not good.
so.
And the
Okay.
needs are great, yeah.
So then next, we do have bills. Before I let Vice Chair Graham talk about the bills, I was going to ask, can Neglia provide details
Yeah.
on their costs? That was
You
one thing
know,
I noticed, is that we're not getting
I was just
timesheet
looking at that
entries.
too, yeah.
I apologize, because I think some of their bills are two-sided, and I might have only scanned one side on, because your bills are one-sided, their bills are two-sided.
You have a second side here, but it is just one line item for planning board and
All right,
Board of
let me,
Adjustment.
let me get to the, because there weren't that many bills from Neglia. So, for instance, the bill for 135 Valley Road, if you, the work is just revised engineering review revised documents. So there's not a lot of explanation.
is that the 1170 bill? Is that the,
1,125.
oh, 1125, oh, 135 Valley, I see.
Yeah.
So we're approving both, that and the, so you see on the
Now,
back?
where are you reading the timesheet descriptions?
Yeah,
Well, that's what, let me make sure that you have it.
so,
Here.
Yeah, that didn't get scanned in.
I
Oh,
would, see, this is the billing backup.
that's what I'm looking for, is the billing backup.
That didn't get scanned in. You got the hard copies, but not in the, did you get?
I don't
No,
think the
didn't
billing
get- no,
backup
I didn't
came
get
in.
that. I just got this sheet. The rest is
Oh, so okay, so I guess.
certain board attorneys'
Here,
bills.
so you got, like, here, you got the billing backup for this one.
Oh, I see, I missed that.
You see?
Oh, that's the same one, 135 Valley.
Yeah.
But I was looking up here, I missed it back
It
here.
wasn't tied with the other bill then.
I'm gonna make them do it, everything one-sided, so
Okay.
that you don't miss it.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, so they do provide the backup.
Okay, yeah, so then if we can get copies of that, that'd be helpful.
So I got a question for the mayor. I'm over here in the corner today, and I noticed that over here in the corner, I've got a literal bell and a literal whistle. What the hell goes on during council meetings? Who sits over here that's got a bell and a whistle?
You also have a bell? Anyway, so,
Well,
Bills?
upon further review, I would make a motion to approve the bills.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.